What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name's Michelle. Today is August 21st of 2023. Time is flying so fast, it's unbelievable. I appreciate you guys joining me this morning. I have a lot to share about the Megasites, as well as some information on wind turbines and Cobalt and the electric road that is being built here in Michigan. I have more information on that, how it works. And I've had some comments already, so thank you guys very much for those comments. Tomorrow, I'm hopefully going to be able to do my Maui video. It depends. The Michigan Strategic Fund is having a board meeting, and I'm going to live stream that. Starts at 9 a.m. So if it ends in time and I have time before lunch to get that video in, I really would like to, because I have a ton of information about Maui, and it's really a travesty what's happening. It's continuing to happen. Media blackout. So tomorrow, Maui, today, all about electric vehicles and the green industry. So we're going to jump in. Let me show you my screen. And we're going to start with an article out of Mackinac Center. Deja vu. Michigan going all in on taxpayer-subsidized battery plants. State battery subsidies have been an enormous bust so far. This just came out August 9th. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. There's a new setting on StreamYard, and I clicked it just to reduce background noise. So hopefully it doesn't mess up my vocals too bad. Let me know. Experimenting a little bit, trying to figure out how to sound as best as possible. So Michigan's Democratic governor announces that the state is set to become a center for advanced battery production, with the industry a part of a new Michigan economy. Thousands of new jobs will be fueled by hundreds of millions and even billions in taxpayer subsidies. The above could certainly apply to Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has made very similar predictions over the past few years, but they came from former Governor Jennifer Granholm more than a decade ago. What happened to Granholm's grand plan? It was a massive failure. Despite its deep state subsidies, Michigan's battery ventures have been a bust. In 2008 and 2009, the MEDC authorized hundreds of millions in credits for battery cell manufacturing. And a report to legislators, the Michigan Strategic Fund, noted that it had approved funding for 5 companies: A123 Subsystems, Dow Kokum, Fortu Power Cell, never heard of those 3, LG Chem, and Johnson Controls Saft. These subsidies helped land investments and short-term jobs, but at a massive cost. Within a few years, the deals were a bust. These companies received a total of $1.4 billion in state and federal subsidies. With predictions, they would create more than 6,800 jobs. By 2014, the companies had fewer than 600 jobs. Today, these companies have mostly either gone through bankruptcy or gotten out of the battery business. This hasn't deterred the current governor from following Granholm's path, because both her and Granholm are part of this vision of the self-anointed assholes of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. She recently wrote on Twitter, "If you're keeping score, when I took office, we had 0 battery manufacturing facilities. Soon, we will have 5. We've brought home $16 billion in projects and secured over 16,000 jobs building EVs, batteries, semiconductors, and clean energy." If you're keeping score, it should be noted that Michigan still has 0 battery manufacturing facilities. The 16,000 jobs the governor mentions are projected, not secured. And Michigan has a terrible track record of turning job projections into actual jobs. None of the major products it has subsidized have hit their projection. Most, in fact, have produced no jobs at all. There are more jobs in paper product wholesaling in Michigan, 2,756, than in battery manufacturing, 2,521. And it is unlikely that government subsidies will do much to change those numbers. Big fat waste of taxpayer dollars. Michigan does need more jobs, but spending billions of dollars for a tiny number of jobs in one industry is a terrible plan, with almost no return on investment for taxpayers. The best thing politicians can do is to set a low, flat tax rate for all businesses and let industries develop on their own. This is called free market. But who wants to come to this state when the taxes are so high unless you're subsidized, unless the government picks you as a winner? It's so incredibly frustrating. Good morning, Dragonfly. Thank you very much for joining me. She-Wolf, I appreciate you joining me as well. Let's see what you got. She-Wolf has been looking into Maui and the new proclamation, which I'm going to talk about more tomorrow, that was put in place in July, and it was only set for 2 months, and it had to do with emergencies, and now they're going to use it. It has to do with historic lands. So she says, think of how many areas there are, like United Nations level. You have West, Asian, and Middle East. Top 3 companies and 3 designated zones. So she has an idea of what's taking place. It's not just in Maui. Now, she's got to flesh out her ideas. I appreciate her sharing the little bit right now that she is sharing. And she said she's looking into 2011 the United Nations and Hawaii and something else. So keep muckraking. Everybody needs to muckrake. It's really important to try to find out what's going on because the government obviously is not going to share with us the truth. We got to find it for ourselves. So thank you for what you do share here, She-Wolf, and thank you guys for joining me. All right, so we have another article that's coming out of Mackinac.org, and it's like Lennon said, you ask who benefits, and, one, on chips, stadiums, and other subsidies, elected officials blind themselves to lobbyists' self-interest. This just came out July 18th. Semiconductor manufacturers lobbied for federal subsidies to build semiconductor plants and got them from the CHIPS and Science Act. Some people noticed that there may be some self-interest at work from the companies lobbying for federal cash. But this is a demonstration of how influence works in state capitals and in Washington. Money in politics does something, but it's rarely the grimy and illegal quid pro quo that many Americans think goes on. Some people think that lobbyists buy politicians. Sure, there are corrupt lawmakers out there happy to sell their votes, and there are corrupt people who try to bribe their way to profit. The FBI anti-corruption work yields results. Most lobbying, however, is not that. It is people exercising their First Amendment rights to argue their interests directly to lawmakers. The lobbyist's goal is to inform and to persuade in service of their employer or their clients. Now, just a quick side tangent, this happens with pharmaceutical drugs to our doctors as well. So they're lobbying to get their drug prescribed more than, the next drug. It's not good for the health of the patient, but it sure is good for Big Pharma. They can be too good at their job. The people they lobby forget that lobbyists are arguing on behalf of their employers and clients. It may seem strange, but elected officials become blind to the obvious point that the lobbyist is arguing for client self-interest and not the public's. Often, they believe in earnest that chip makers are trying to protect domestic interests. That the manufacturers will be collecting big checks from the government on profit-earning ventures does not seem to trouble legislators. People ought to be afraid that their lawmakers become blind to basic self-interest. It leads them to deliver private benefits to self-serving interest groups at the public's expense. For instance, some businesses want money at the taxpayer expense. They get it too. When they issue an ultimatum to states, either pony up or lose out on jobs. Despite the promises of jobs, giving companies extra cash is ineffective at creating jobs. It is expensive to the state budget and simply an unfair way for states to conduct business. It is. You want to talk about equitable, which I can't stand equity, but it isn't equal at all either, which equality is something to strive for, equity is not. A coalition of groups tends to support company handouts anyway. It's composed of the people who are going to get the subsidies and the local economic development agencies that get to hand them out. And they also get a little bit themselves. I mean, the right place, I guess, is Yeah, I would call that a local economic development agency, and they got 50 million from the $175 million that we just gave Gotion. And again, they lobbied. Gotion applied to be a lobbyist 14 days before the Senate Appropriations Committee approved that $175 million. And Senator Anthony actually has a comment about how she came to the decision to approve that money, which I'm sure has to do with lobbyists. She kind of says so. The lobbyists for those groups are somehow able to get lawmakers to ignore their clear self-interest in collecting cash and getting to hand it out. Some legislators are so blind to that self-interest that they suspect critics of the spending somehow to be the ones serving some ulterior motive. Does that sound familiar? I think she said something about we're coming from a point of privilege. And I'm sure that she thinks that the people that are against it are all Republican and are somehow involved in that Republican politic push, which is not true at all. So she probably does think that we have some ulterior motive when we're just the people that she's supposed to be working for. So, on a bill that hands out hundreds of millions to select businesses, beneficiaries accuse opponents of being self-interested, even though the supporters of the subsidiaries are the people getting clear direct benefits. This has been the case on stadium subsidies. The poor economist J.C. Bradbury gets accused of self-interest for demonstrating that stadium subsidies don't pay for themselves, but the self-interest of team owners who are asking for subsidies goes unnoted. It's not just in corporate handout policy. There are a lot of lobbyists who are good at their jobs, so legislators get confused and make alcohol control policies that enriches a handful of people in the business rather than protecting public from alcohol's harms. Occupational licensing rules are there to protect providers from competition rather than protecting people from harmful practitioners. And this happens over and over and over again. That is why I'm not for government regulations 99% of the time, because there are so many negative side effects. The road to hell is paved with good intentions is what comes to mind. And that is giving them the benefit of the doubt. It's either ignorance or malevolence at this point. Hawaii, I think it's a mix of both, honestly. But these things, probably 90% of them are a mix of both ignorance and malevolence. But you can't think they're all evil. So that's why we have to put the ignorance in there. It is possible that these people just don't understand that they are being hoodwinked, that they don't realize that they're the baddies. There is a lot of this at the state and national levels. Brink, Lindsay, and Stephen Tellis dwell on how intellectual property rules, land use regulation, and financial regulations are used to deliver benefits to special interests in their book, The Captured Economy. I might have to check that book out. Or follow Colin Grabo's work on domestic shipping regulations that cost consumers to protect shippers. The blindness of legislators to clear motives of lobbyists is nothing new. As James Madison wrote in the Federalist 10, people are happy to split into factions to use the power of government for private advantages. This is a dangerous vice that creates mortal diseases under which popular governments have everywhere perished. The tendency is unavoidable as long as the connection subsists between our reason and our self-love. What else we have? She-Wolf says, okay, many names and many people, companies. All right. Yes, again, please let me know whenever you're ready what you find. I appreciate all different types of information. I just found out about that proclamation because of a channel called Hawaii Real Estate, which I will link when I do the Maui video. I might try to link it actually in this video down below because it's really important. He's doing good work over there in Maui, and what's going on there is a message to us all. It really is. This is about land, okay? And so is United Nations Agenda 21. It's about land use, land regulations, and land grabs. To Madison, the antidote was a vigilant electorate which elects wise representatives who won't fall for the trap. And maybe that will happen in the future, but too many lawmakers fall short of this standard. Voters ought to care more when their elected officials blindly serve self-interest groups. Obviously, I agree. I wish more people would care. Here we have a quick video I wanted to share with you on the green agenda. It's important because the Huffington Post just came out with an article on Gotion that I'm going to share. I'm going to read some of it. It's quite long, but this is applicable to that before we get into that.
Chain.
Hopefully everybody can hear.
Wind turbines, which last about 20 years.
I even hear. Let's see what we got going on. Maybe that will help.
Years consume a colossal.
Can you guys hear that? I thought I had this sound thing fixed, but doesn't seem to be so. Maybe if I refresh, that might do it. Huh. Oh boy. I'm sorry, guys. Try one more switcheroo on my speaker, and if that doesn't work, then I'm going to move on and just leave the link.
In energy and a keen environmentalist since my 20s. My office is solar powered, so I was mortified to discover that a single lithium mine causes millions of tons of waste every year, laced with sulfuric acid and radioactive uranium, polluting the water supply for 300 years, not to mention the unacceptable human costs with child labour to mine cobalt. When I researched which solar panel to purchase, I did not for 1 minute consider.
Okay, I'm not sure if you guys can hear it and get confirmation or not. I'll come back to it. Maybe I can figure that out. I am very sorry for that. Very inconvenient. Okay. So this is the Huffington Post article. The dirty work of building clean energy is dividing this Michigan town. The Michigan EV battery plant has come to embody the complex politics of fighting climate change and the difficulty of building trust in a polarized age. This came out August 16th. And it starts with a picture of the township supervisor that is being recalled. Jim Chapman, former police officer, a grandfather, and a Republican. Until recently, he was also the relatively uncontroversial twice-elected supervisor of this rural town, where his family roots go back 5 generations. That was before the war over Gotion. Gotion rhymes with motion. In the U.S.-based subsidiary of a Chinese company that manufactures lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. It wants to build this next factory on a parcel of land in Green Charter Township, where supporters promise it will bring 50 workers to a region that's been bleeding money and people while producing material essential for the fight against climate change. Boom. Already, I have a disagreement with this individual and this article. Now, Huffington Post is not far left, maybe far left. It's a left-leaning, I don't know how far left it is. I'm not going to pretend to know where everything is nowadays because I thought I was in the center, but people consider me far right, so who knows? And I don't consider myself far right at all. But again, who knows where anything is? I just know that this is a left-leaning publication, and they think that climate change is man-made and that we need to stop using fossil fuels in order to fix the cyclical climate. So obviously I have issue with that because it is not green at all. There's nothing green about it. In fact, if you come over here, we have Scotland cuts down 16 million trees to develop wind farms. How is cutting down 16 million trees in beautiful Scotland for huge wind turbines, how is that green? That is the opposite of green. That's why in the thumbnail, I said it's blood red, because not only do you have the wind turbines that are destroying trees to put them in place, but then you come here and look at this. This is a graveyard. You see over here? This is a tiny little tractor that is just burying these wind turbine blades because we don't know how to dispose of them besides to bury them. So now how are you going to grow plants on any of this? How are you going to grow anything when you have this blocking the way underneath and we're burying it? It's insane. So how is this green? You come over here and whales die while officials, media, and environmentalists lie. They keep saying there are no studies that say that the wind turbines off of the East Coast are killing the whales, and yet the whales are dying way more than they have. So, and the only new variable is the wind turbines and the robots that are on the bottom of the ocean floor sending out signals to sea so they can put these stupid wind turbines down there. How do you not understand that perhaps our technology and the signals that are being put out are harming whales and other wildlife that we don't even know? But they want to say that these people are just fossil fuel protesters, like paid protesters. They're for the fossil fuel industry. Like, how crazy is that? It drives me absolutely nuts. So not only that, but then you have Ireland's bonkers plan to kill cows to save the planet. This just came out the 20th of August. You have to hand it to the Green Movement when it comes to their increasingly delusional race towards the illusionary target of net zero. E-bikes and e-scooters that have unfortunate tendency to explode in the middle of the night. Electric cars, which takes days to charge when you can find a charger. Motorists threatened with eye-watering fines if they dare to go faster than 20 miles an hour. Honestly, don't be surprised if the next generation of cars come equipped with only 2 gears and built-in speed inhibitor. Well, I got more on the software, vehicles being a software service, and that's where we're going with it. But yeah, you'll have to pay $100 a month in order to go over 60 miles an hour. That's the type of stuff that we're going to be seeing, unfortunately. But now you have the government demanding that 200,000 cows are culled to meet climate goals. And you come down here and it says, a fifth-generation Irish dairy farmer stands in what looks like a field of weeds. He has planted all these beautiful plants to reduce his farm's greenhouse gas emissions. Ireland's cows, which belch out methane, the gas responsible for more than a quarter of global warming, are the country's worst climate offender. That is why this is not a green energy initiative. This is blood red. You are going to kill cows for no reason except for that they belch and that allegedly is causing climate change? How effing insane is this? Again, I'm going back to this dirty work of building clean energy from the Huffington Post, but how do people completely ignore all of that and say that this is for fighting climate change? Gotion, which is going to take out 270 acres of actual literal green wetlands, and you're going to put a huge building, a battery plant there, man-made, and yet that is green? She-Wolf says, can you give me a wrench? I want to give you a link. Give you a wrench. See, when I click on the triple thing next to your name, it says put user in timeout, so I can put you in timeout for being naughty, or I can ban you. But those are the only two options I have. So, unfortunately, I'm not sure how to do what you're asking, and I apologize for that ignorance. This StreamYard is supposed to be intuitive, but some things are not for me. So, this way. We're going back over here. Discussions appear to have started sometime last year, leading to negotiations over what financial incentives state and local officials were willing to offer. Approval required a series of votes, including a September resolution that Chapman and the rest of Green Township's board supported unanimously. Chapman called Gotion a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But the project kicked up angry opposition as the process moved forward. This is another thing that is wrong. It started with concerns about the company's ties to China. No, it started with concerns about battery plants and EV batteries, because those who look into EV batteries know that you can't recycle them. The cobalt used in them brings about slavery. The slave trade over in the Republic of Congo is another way that this is actually a blood red industry. It is not a green industry. But, of course, Huffington Post is going to say this started with companies' ties to China, because that is a more Republican and it's far-fetched, even though we have more proof that Gotion is actually linked to China, but it doesn't matter. The people that are for Gotion, it doesn't matter how much proof you show. They don't care that it's linked to China. They don't care. That's the bottom line. Followed by skepticism over all the promised benefits, economic benefits. Then came the fears, legitimate, unfounded, or somewhere in between, depending on who you ask, that the components and solvents of battery making would contaminate the local water supply or pollute the air. Again, East Palestine, if you don't think that is a land grab, we'll just have to wait and see. Time will tell, won't it? The project, okay, right here. Opponents may not be able to stop the project at this point. Gotion can break ground as soon as it gets permits, which the State Environmental Protection Division and other agencies have authority to grant on their own. And who voted for those people? Nobody. Whitmer appointed those people. So this is how our vote is getting, they're getting around our vote, is these stupid committees and these big government entities that were just created. It's so frustrating. Let's see. Residents angry about the plant have gathered enough signatures to force a November recall vote for Green Charter Township. They've also made it clear how they feel. Most memorably, here's another jab, most memorably in a 2-hour-plus April town hall that the board had to move outside next to a playground amid darkening skies and falling temperatures to accommodate the large crowd and their protest signs. At the meeting, streamed online by right-wing media site The Midwesterner, some Gotion opponents literally screamed. See? They just put that right out first. That's why we can't scream, because they will use every single thing against us that they can. Others spoke more deliberately, relying on prepared text. I'm just going to be honest. I am not a fan of mainstream media and the way they twist. And I'm not as understanding, because to me, they should just tell the truth instead of do what they do in these articles, which is subtly twist things. You should feel sick to your stomach for what you're doing, said one speaker, a veteran wearing a Top Dad t-shirt, who mentioned his land was just east of the Gotion site. When that thing goes off, who's going to be sucking on them toxic fumes? I'll tell you who. My 2 little girls. Several people accused Chapman and his counterparts of misrepresenting community sentiments when promoting the project to state officials, and of accepting bribes, a charge with no evidence that Chapman has strongly denied. Okay, several people have accused Chapman and his counterparts of misrepresenting community sentiment. Why don't you do your due diligence and look that he actually did that? Not just that people accused him, but that he actually did. He went on to the Senate Appropriations Committee and said that like 90% or 95% of people in his township were for the project, but he never did a survey. He lied. And then when somebody did actually go around and ask the people that lived in that township, it turns out that 80 to 85% of them were against it. So where did the 90 to 95% for it come from? Straight out of his ass. That's where it came from. Okay? But why didn't they say that? This makes it look like people are just accusing him, but there's no proof. I don't like that. It's disingenuous. It's very clear that from the start, you intentionally tried to railroad this project past us, one opponent said. We count on you, our elected officials, to look out for us. But instead, you have all chosen to completely betray us. It's impossible to know whether opponents like these outnumber the plant supporters or whether they are simply more vocal. No, it's not impossible to know. Now, I'm pretty sure Marjorie Steele, who put out a kind of response to this, I'm going to look at. I'm pretty sure she brings this up, but the townships all around, because Green Charter Township still hasn't done a survey officially, as far as I'm aware. Jim Chapman said it's too expensive, but all his legal fees, $210 an hour for his lawyer, that's okay. But you can't do a survey for the people when you're supposed to be working for the people. But all of the townships surrounding have done surveys, and over 50%, most of the time, well over 50%, were against the project. So again, it's not impossible to know. That is disingenuous. Just as it's impossible to tell how much of the opposition began organically or how much was stirred up by outside agitators with their own political agendas. I don't like the way this guy wrote this. I'm going to be honest. I don't like it. It's a case study in just how complex the realities of. Oh wait, sorry. Let's go up here because this stupid paragraph ain't over. Just as it's impossible to tell how much opposition began organically. Okay, the debate has created a deep rift in the community, dividing neighbors, friends, and families, spawning protests, and maybe even acts of vandalism. There were no acts of vandalism. A car got broken into, and it was automatically blamed on the Gotion people, but there was no proof, and nothing came of it. So why even have this in here? Just to make us look bad? It's a case study in just how complex the realities of implementing a green economic agenda can be and the political effects for next November and beyond. 1 year ago, President Joe Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. This paragraph tells you everything you need to know, of which the single most important piece is a projected $350 billion investment in clean energy. The law is part of broader federal and state efforts to slow climate change while rebuilding America's industrial base, in a key part of what's come to be known as Bidenomics. The early results are impressive. Yeah, they're impressive. It's going to be really impressive when we don't have heat because we don't have any energy sources, because we have been forced by 2030 and 2035, sometimes 2025, to switch over to green industry. The results are impressive. The public investment and the private capital that's attracted are financing everything from wind farms to EV charging stations, along with research into hydrogen as an alternative energy source. The projects are one reason unemployment is hovering near a half-century low. No, it's near a half-century low because people have stopped looking for work and you don't count those people. So your numbers are skewed. You can't say that it's a half-century low. People are saying, screw you, I don't want to work. And part of it is because the private industry has to compete with government. Government just keeps out giving money. Pretty soon, a universal basic income will come into place. And then how in the hell is a small mom and pop shop going to compete with the government? That's why no one's working. That's why it's a half-century low. Why environmental groups are so hopeful that the U.S. is making progress toward reducing planet-warming gases. Prove carbon is a planet-warming gas that's bad for us. That has still not been proven. Decarbonization will require more than starting projects. It will also require finishing them, and doing so quickly enough to prevent the worst effects of climate change. Among the biggest complications is simply that all of this clean energy infrastructure has to be built somewhere, taking up large swaths of land, potentially disrupting communities, and starting up industrial processes that can have their own negative effects on the environment. Why? Again, I'm going to ask this anytime it's brought up. Why are we trying to compete with an industry that is not good for the environment, that we don't know how to recycle the batteries, and that China has its whole body well in the battery industry? So why are we going to compete with them in that industry? I mean, technically we're not. We're just allowing them to build on our land and poison our water because it's a Chinese company, so it's not really competition. We're just allowing them in. Hey, come on in. Those possibilities are fueling local backlashes everywhere from Indiana, where farmers are trying to block a planned solar array the size of Manhattan. Think about that. How is a bunch of solar panels more green than a farm that plants that, or food, cows? Like, again, it's an anti-life bullshit thing that's going on. It has nothing to do with saving trees or green energy at all. To North Carolina, where residents are fighting plans to mine the precious lithium that goes into EV batteries. One recent report by the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law tallied up 293 renewable energy projects across 45 states that had run into tough opposition, making for a potentially significant impediment to achievement of climate goals. I didn't vote for those climate goals. Did you? Frustrated proponents of the new projects see this opposition as a combination of NIMBYism, which, I hate to say it, I had to look this up, which is not in my backyard-ism. Really. There you go. It says it right there. Not in my backyard sentiment and political opportunism, chiefly by Republicans and their allies who don't believe in or simply don't care about climate change. Yeah, I guess thanks Huffington Post for talking about Gotion and making it more mainstream, I guess. I hope people will not just believe the bullshit that's coming out of this article and that they'll actually look into it once they're introduced to the topic. But yeah, I'm not surprised Huffington Post is like this, but local opponents, meanwhile, frequently say they are trying to protect natural habitats and the character of their neighborhoods while bringing up substantive questions that officials and many experts prefer to avoid. The fight is already reverberating across national politics and the 2024 presidential campaign, but it's in places like this rural corner of Michigan where the conflict between economic and environmental progress versus the shadow selves feels most immediate. Him with this Ford. The dashboard of Chapman's red Ford F-150 is a collection of trucker hats that paint an almost too-on-the-nose picture of his roles in public life. There's one from his work as town supervisor and another for his work as a volunteer fire captain. Last month, while he was giving me a driving tour, we had to stop because his pager was crackling with word of a nearby medical emergency. Chapman has a stocky build, a bushy gray mustache. Okay. A few constituents recognize him as he steered the truck through Green Charter Township's few intersections, and as he waved back to people, he told me about the local history, the Native Americans who occupied the land first, the European immigrant settlers who arrived in the 19th century, and the thriving local economy of timber and fishing that evolved afterward. Some of the old stone-lined trout hatcheries are still standing, though they're obsolete and no longer suitable for commercial use. Chapman mentioned that the local parks department is trying to find grant money that would finance restoration to preserve the hatcheries as a town artifact. Chapman took me driving on South Green Township's main boulevard past a trailer park and large gravel works to Big Rapids, a neighboring town whose roughly 9,000 residents make it about 3 times as big as Green Township. Its downtown has a few blocks of upscale clothing boutiques and restaurants, as well as a walking path along the Muskegon, the smallish winding river that flows all the way to Lake Michigan. More than an hour's drive to the west, it's popular with tubers and kayakers. Yeah, that's just one section. And then there's so much. This aquifer that Gotion is going to be built on, this is extremely important for everybody all the way from where Gotion is proposed to Lake Michigan. It's very popular among boaters on Hardy Dam Pond, which is also the Muskegon River. So it goes all the way from small with tubers and kayaks to large with cigarette boats sometimes, which it's a little, they're a little bit big for this river, but hey, what am I gonna do? The economic heart of Big Rapids is Ferris State University, which specializes in trainings for fields like nursing, teaching, and engineering. The problem is especially acute in the upper Midwest, where long, slow decline of auto industry has contributed to stagnant population growth, with lots of young people moving elsewhere to find jobs or just warmer weather. I think that the latter is more true, especially since young people can work online and work remotely, and they are more and more. The warmer weather is the biggest part. Me personally, I am here because of my family, because I love Michigan and the river, but I like warm weather. And, someday I hope to move even down to South America, where it's always 75 and I can grow coffee beans. Only 3 months ago, a medium-sized Big Rapids auto parts supplier announced it was permanently reducing its workforce by 60 people, even though the auto industry as a whole is booming right now. Yeah. Developments like these in a county that official statistics say is among the poorest in Michigan. They keep bringing that up, where it's not the poorest in Michigan. That's where Baldwin is. No offense to anyone who lives in that county, but that county is, I think it's like Lake something. That county is the poorest. But We don't need these types of jobs. Developments like these in a county that officials' statistics say is among the poorest go a long way toward explaining why local and regional officials have worked so hard to lure new employers. And why they're so excited a year ago when a mostly undeveloped parcel of land along the border dividing the two townships first drew Gotion's interest. Undeveloped, yes, it's wetlands. It's literal wetlands. That's why it's undeveloped. Good morning, Don. Thank you for joining me. I'm going over this article out of Huffington Post, but it is extremely long, so I'm not going to continue going through the entire thing. I have a lot to share, but I just wanted to give you a general idea. And here is, where is it? Oh, one more to show why this is a red industry and not a green industry, even though Huffington Post wants to say it is. Modern-day slavery in the Congo powers the rechargeable battery economy. This just came out this year, but it's based on the book Red Cobalt, which, yes, I have right back there, but it's a little bit buried. So here's the picture that I had on the thumbnail. This is what's happening because of the battery industry and cobalt that's in the batteries. And lithium mining over in Argentina, where Gotion is supposed to get their lithium, that is destroying the indigenous populations of Argentina and Brazil. So again, it's a red industry. Leo, it's just my mom. So coming over here, this is a response to Huffington Post Gotion case study on clean energy from Marjorie Steele just 2 days ago. And this is long as well. I recommend reading both for yourself so that you can get an idea of what each is proposing. But I wanted to come down here when she addresses "You guys are NIMBY." Frustrated proponents of the new project see this opposition as a combination of NIMBYism, or not my backyard sentiment, and political opportunism. To be clear, I am absolutely not NIMBY about these megasites and manufacturing 4.0. As I told Jonathan, from an environmental perspective, I don't think these plants belong anywhere. Exactly. It's not that I don't want them in my backyard. I don't want them anywhere. And Marjorie is saying the same thing, and I agree on this point. They're bad for the environment. And the only reason that they want it in place is for the centrification and electrification of the world. I think it's a bad, dirty industry that will expedite the destruction and toxification of this planet. I am also not a Republican, very much not so. To clarify, earlier I said she's Democrat. She's not. She's Green Independent. So I'm sorry for that misunderstanding. She's not a Republican. She's Green Independent. I'm not a Republican. I am independent. But I do love Mother Nature and want her to remain clean or to get clean. So we have a lot in common in that, but not in everything. We don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything with anybody. I probably said that all backwards, but you know what I mean. I think that she has nuanced positions, and as do I, and I agree on this point. Industry 4.0, or she says manufacturing 4.0, and the megasites are not good anywhere. But Marjorie, you say, we need to get off petroleum as an energy source. Yes, we do, but turning the world into a toxic wasteland in the process isn't the way to do it, which leads me to my next point. See, this is where we have a little disagreement. Why do we need to get off of petroleum as an energy source? What are we going to do for energy if we don't use petroleum? How come we can't just clean up petroleum? And maybe that's just my ignorance, that there's no way that we can just clean up the energy source we already have. Perhaps that's true, but I don't know. The Green New Deal is helping fight climate change. No, it's not. It's actually expediting it. This is from the article. The early results are impressive. This is the same paragraph that I have issue with. She goes into, yeah, well, everyone is happy when free money is flowing around, aren't they? Let's be clear about a few things. Of course, our current levels and methods of energy consumption and a consumption of pretty much everything are unacceptably high and toxic. package expansion from all things by them. Just to people haven't for these fees. These are fees driven by buyers who insist protecting all necessary plastic household necessary and overpowered critical to green. No, and this I small disagreement. These features are by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations Agenda 1, top down the suppliers who are majorities with the World Economic Forum. You go on their site and see our next energy that's coming here again. They are partners of the World Economic Forum. So they're even higher than the supplier. I can assure you that these smart devices are indeed going to fucking kill this planet. It's a horrifically unintelligent kind of way. This isn't just a bad solution, it's going to expedite the destruction of the planet. And again, it brought back slave labor in the Republic of Congo. Rather than cite one article, I encourage you to browse through the plethora of research from EDRA, who, of course, Marjorie Steele is the founder of EDRA. Thank you for all that work, Marjorie. Sound is cracking. Yes, I am sorry for that. I am unsure. It's only started in the last 2 videos. And maybe it's the cable. So, again, I don't know if it's in the stars, but I've been having so many tech issues. I am very sorry for that cracking sound. Perhaps if I just get a new mic, although this mic is supposed to be really good, so I'm sorry. There are solutions. They're very real, very implementable, very sustainable methodologies of moving towards truly green technology and quickly, and they have nothing to do with Boeing, welfare windmills, and solar so-called gardens pumping energy into a centralized grid. So she's got 3 points, and I'm going to go over these 3 points, and then I'm going to move on and again, everything will be in the description. I highly recommend you read the entire thing. We have a whole host of truly green energy technologies, which farmers and engineers have been tinkering with for decades, from geothermal heating and cooling to compost methane-powered cook stoves to passive gravity-powered hydroelectric energy batteries, and so many others. We have, among our agriculturalists and engineers, the expertise to develop the kind of potpourri of sustainable, small-scale technologies which could completely transform home and business energy consumption if the technology were allowed to be open source, i.e. not bound to patent rights and intellectual property laws. We're pushing everything to centralized systems when we should be decentralizing, or put in much more practical terms, we here in the United States and in many other countries currently make it illegal to go off the grid and 100% onto your own power sources. Instead, residents, farms, and businesses are incentivized to rent out their land and building space to power companies, whose Boeing welfare windmills and hideous solar gardens run energy back into centralized grid, where the power has to be purchased by those same residents and farmers. The solution for true sustainability here is in allowing residents and businesses to find their own independent, open-sourced green energy solutions, and to reduce the demand for power from a centralized grid. In effect, to empower folks to put the power companies out of business. To put it in business terms, a diverse portfolio is a healthy portfolio. Her and I couldn't agree more on this. I am for decentralized methods. I don't think we should have 40 farms supplying the whole world for food, because that brings bad practices. That brings chemicals to produce a more fruitful harvest, when we should have 10,000 instead of just 40, right? I'm just making up numbers here, but you understand what I'm saying. We need more small-time farmers that are using natural methods to grow food. And natural methods to produce energy. But anytime I've seen anything about somebody coming up with a way to provide energy for their house that's not on the grid, that's off grid, like she's saying, they get shut down. Or worse, I've seen people that came up with how you can run your truck off of water. That individual died very shortly after he posted that information. So I'm not saying he was murdered. Who knows what happened to him? He could have died from natural causes, but there is a concerted effort to keep new innovations that decentralize off the table. Why? Degrowth is the only sensible answer, the opposite of Friedman's limitless growth shareholder capitalism. I like Milton Friedman. I don't like Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg and I agree 100% on this point. This endless quarter-over-quarter growth is beyond madness. It's killing us and it's killing the planet. We have to fucking stop growing and focus on how to peacefully shrink. Well, the World Economic Forum definitely wants us to shrink as well. I'm not saying that she has the same ideas as the World Economic Forum in that shrinking. I also do know that we don't need to keep buying constantly cheap junk, and that's not good either. But I don't think that that is, maybe that is the point of Friedman's limitless growth shareholder capitalism. I don't view it as such. I think, though, that it is, perhaps it's values, human values, because when you make a bunch of cheap stuff, right? My washing machine probably won't last for 4 years because they want me to buy a new washing machine, and mine's relatively new. My dryer is old, from the 90s, I think. That'll probably last until I die. Like, who knows? It'll last 20 years. So that is obviously an issue, but it's an issue of money over people, right? You want to create a good product or service, and then money is a side, is a reward for creating a good product or service. Instead, what we have now is people creating products or service in order to make money. So we need to shift our mindset on exactly why we are producing things to begin with. But anyway, I digress. I don't want to grow until we die. I don't think that's right. But I also don't think that we should be shrinking either. I think we should try to get the world to have what America has. But I don't know. You let me know. Tell me what you think. Do you like Friedman's views, Milton Friedman? Or are you with Marjorie on some shrinkage is needed? I can see her point, but personally, it's a fine line to walk. The World Economic Forum, it's anti-human, and I don't think Marjorie's anti-human at all, obviously. But with the World Economic Forum, they want to shrink because they're anti-human. And so we got to be careful with shrinkage. Clean energy isn't green energy. Did I share this? Share this tab instead. Here we are. So this is just one picture of what a solar garden is looking like. And so think about this, the size of Manhattan over in North Carolina. Would you want that? I wouldn't want that. This came out August 14th. Wind turbines and solar panels don't grow on trees. Wind and solar. She-Wolf says neither. Let me know what you think, She-Wolf. What kind of economic policies do you like? If you have any ideas and want to share them, I appreciate whatever you have to share. Wind and solar energy do not generate much electricity, but they have a great power to cloud people's minds. It is now fairly well known that wind and solar can pose serious threats to the nation's wildlife, from endangered right whales to tens of thousands of bird deaths each year from solar. But optimistic green energy advocates still don't realize the many environmental impacts associated with manufacturing, maintaining, and disposing of solar panels and wind turbines. It takes a great deal of material to produce solar panels and wind turbines. Wind and solar energy technologies collect diffuse and intermittent intermittent gusts of wind, and rays of sunlight to generate electricity, which means they have a very low energy density in comparison to other generation technologies like fossil fuels or nuclear. Because of the diffuse nature of their fuel sources, renewables consume orders of magnitude more materials for the same electricity output, thereby causing greater environmental burdens than do more dense energy resources. A single 100 megawatt natural gas-fired turbine, about as large as a residential house, will power 75,000 homes. Replacing that energy output with wind requires 20 wind turbines that occupy around 10 square miles of land. And it also needs an enormous quantities of conventional materials, including concrete, steel, and fiberglass, along with less common materials, including rare earth elements, such as dysprosium? I am sorry. Never heard of that. Mark Mills, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, wrote in a 2020 report. She-Wolf says, if I can get my mouse over there, I'm going to share it with you because it's hilarious. She-Wolf says, I would have to live with you. That's a lot of discussions. I hear you. And it is, it's very nuanced. And, Marjorie has a lot right. And when she made EDRA and understood the economic development corporations are the root source of this problem, the Megasite issue that's going on in Michigan, I commend her. It's hard for people to see sometimes exactly the root, like where is the problem that we need to address in order to fix it. And that she did that, and she made EDRA, and I am really proud of Green Charter Township residents for the muckraking that they've done and the work that they've done to try to protect their home. And that goes with all the people for the megasites, Schwartz Creek, all 6 megasites, Shiawassee, there's a new one, Hemlock, semiconductor going to Hemlock. So there's a lot going on. Michiganders are understanding more and more every day that the economic development corporations who are implementing Agenda 21, United Nations Agenda 21, they are the problem here. They go around the voter. They just do whatever the hell they want. But I'm getting into a tangent. Global mining today already accounts for 40% of worldwide industrial energy use, Mills wrote, but renewable plans proposed or underway will require from 400% to 8,000% more mining for dozens of minerals, from copper and nickel to aluminum, graphite, and lithium. The energy system is dominated by hydrocarbons and will be for decades, Mills told the House Energy and Commerce Committee in April. After the materials are mined, the wind turbines and solar panels must be manufactured. Construction materials, steel, glass, and concrete, are produced in energy and emissions-intensive industries. Cement, concrete, and steel production account for 7% each of global CO2 emissions. The industry relies on iron smelting, cement kilns, petrochemical feedstocks, and fuels for plastics and fiberglass. Fossil fuels are also needed to power ships, trucks, and construction equipment, as well as providing lubricants for gearboxes on turbines. In 2021, wind and solar combined to produce less than 5% of total U.S. primary energy. But President Biden has targeted achieving a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035 and net zero emissions economy by no later than 2050. Again, I always bring up my video on the America 2050 agenda, because that is where the regions come from. That's why Michigan and a little bit of Canada and Ohio, it's all going to be a region. There won't be a state by 2050 if they have their way. If wind turbines were to supply half the world's electricity, explains Mills, nearly 2 billion tons of coal, around 1/4 of global coal use, would have to be consumed to produce the concrete steel, along with 1.5 billion barrels of oil to make the composite blades. Economic and environmental damages aren't the only problems. There's a third problem, moral cleanliness. Around half of the world's polysilicon, a key ingredient in solar cells, is made in China, where the Uyghur, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, Muslims are enslaved. to produce it. Yes, solar panels are made by slave labor, just as cobalt mining for EV batteries is slave labor. This is what we're bringing into Michigan when we allow these megasites to be produced. The majority of the world's cobalt, over 70%, is mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't think it's democratic with slave labor, right? Cobalt is essential to manufacture the batteries that will be needed to provide backup for wind and solar and to power electric vehicles. As of 2022, there is no such thing as a clean supply chain of cobalt from the Congo. All cobalt sourced from the DRC is tainted by various degrees of abuse, including slavery, child labor, forced labor, debt bondage, human trafficking, hazardous and toxic working conditions, pathetic wages, injury and death, and incalculable environmental harm. Siddharth Kara wrote in his shocking expose, Cobalt Red. All right, I'm going to pull it out right here. Cobalt Red. Highly recommend it. He had an awesome interview on Joe Rogan podcast. I highly recommend that as well. It's good to know because he actually went there. He's the one where most of those pictures came from, and the video that's out there came from him. I don't know about you, but I prefer my energy, metals, and minerals to be produced by well-paid roughnecks and miners under strict labor and environmental regulations, rather than extracted under compulsion by poverty-stricken Congolese children or enslaved Uyghurs. Finally, wind turbines and solar panels don't last forever. Solar and wind energy sources are said to last an average of 25 years, though in practice, wind is often repowered after a meeting of only 10. As a result, the process of extraction and production is renewed in half the time, as the old panels and turbines must be disposed of, which I showed you a picture of how they're disposed of. They're just buried whole. Great, right? That's great. Clean energy waste is nothing to scoff at either. Many of the materials used to manufacture solar panels can be toxic, and if disposed of improperly, they can leach into drinking water. Similarly, wind power will create over 3 million tons per year of unrecyclable plastics from worn-out wind turbine blades, according to Mills. When the 20 wind turbines that constitute just one small 100-megawatt wind farm wear out, decommissioning and trashing them will lead to 4-fold more non-recyclable plastic trash than all the world's recyclable plastic straws combined. Foretold. Then you get paper straws at some place that dissolve in your drink, but we're going to have wind turbines and push for wind turbines. That's green energy. So when the Huffington Post sits there and says things like that, are you telling me that he's never heard of all that, or he disregards or doesn't believe any of that? Like, what is going on there? Is it ignorance or is it malevolence? Both wind turbines and solar panels are coated with PFAS sealants. PFAS-covered waste in landfills has a record of leaching into groundwater. The Biden administration Environmental Protection Agency has proposed a pollution limit of these forever chemicals of 4 parts per trillion. That limit is almost certainly far too stringent to be reasonable, but if the administration is serious, it will need to hold wind and solar to a special, more lenient standard than other forms of electricity generation. So, is using wind and solar any better than burning fossil fuels? This is a false dichotomy. Wind and solar energy infrastructure would not exist without the fossil fuels needed to manufacture it. And the intermittency of wind and solar means that some of the renewable advantage of clean energy is offset by extra gas burned inefficiently as backup, wrote Meredith Angwin in her book, Shortening the Grid. Do not be fooled by the idea that a high renewable percentage is the most virtuous form of grid. This is especially the case if the grid isn't stable. If green virtue is obtained only by ceasing the use of fossil fuels, renewables are entirely virtue-free. Wind and solar simply shift fossil fuel usage from electric generation portion of the cycle toward the more inefficient backup role and increased use, manufacture, and disposal. Recent data by nonprofit Environmental Progress shows that China powers its solar industry with coal. It's quite likely that the solar ends up more carbon intensive than carbon captured aided natural gas. So let's get everybody on natural gas. Again, let's clean up what energy we already have. That way, we don't have to freeze to death in the winter one of these years because our government pushed so hard to get into renewables that now we don't have any energy whatsoever. Again, Europe, I just saw another warning for Europeans that this winter is going to be very difficult because they don't have energy to provide heat and winter is coming. This is what we're going to do to ourselves if we allow these assholes to continue switching over once again to renewable energies. Clean wind and solar are critically dependent on specific fossil energies. According to scientist and policy analyst Vaclav Smil, we have no non-fossil substitutes that would be readily available on the requisite large commercial scales. While nuclear offers a form of generally clean, scalable electricity generation, it's nigh impossible to build in the U.S. In the end, wind and solar aren't clean by environmentalists' own standards. And if environmentalists were to scrutinize wind and solar as much as fossil and nuclear, they might find the benefits of their energy transition outweighed by the costs. Great article out of Mackinac.org, put it together very nicely. Let me know what you think. Have you guys heard about the solar and wind before now? And how bad it actually is for the environment and how many fossil fuels it takes? Lisa says, thank you so much for everyone's hard work on bringing information to light. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for being here, and I'm sure that you are doing your best to inform individuals. Now, we're going to get into just a few more Gotion updates, but one of them is China and the link to China. People have known about it, have tried to tell people about it, but there are people that just don't care. So you're always going to run into people that doesn't matter what facts you give them. They don't want to hear it. They refuse to acknowledge that it's a problem even. So, Megasite developer Gotion lies about environment and materials. This came out August 15th. And I already reported on this because the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly video had this information in it, but this came out from EDRA, and it just gives a little bit more context. Muskegon River Watershed Assembly confirms Gotion VP Chuck Thellen's public assertion that the regulatory agency had absolutely no concerns about the facility materials was disingenuous. So, Muskegon River Watershed Assembly admitted that they did not say they had no qualms. So that means that Chuck Thellen is the one that was caught lying. The latest bombshell codifies with hard evidence the growing distrust Mecosta County residents and Big Rapids Township officials have expressed over Gotion's proposed $2.5 billion EV megasite. If he will lie about things like this, what else is he capable of? Asks EDRA of Michigan advocate Brandy Sweet. A fellow muckraker, lives in Green Township, has been doing so much research, spending so much time calling all of the representatives, calling the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, Eagle, just spending a lot of time on this. And it makes sense. She lives there. She loves the Muskegon River, as we all do, that's fighting against the Gotion project. And she loves Michigan, as everybody who is fighting the Megasites love Michigan, right? We want it recreational. Sweet reached out to the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly to confirm whether or not Mr. Thellen's comments were true shortly after the May 9th meeting, and after months of back and forth communication, EDRA was invited to present their concerns in a public Zoom meeting. During the July 17th meeting, which this links to the video I published, Muskegon River Watershed Assembly's principal watershed scientist, Marty Holtgren, confirmed that Mr. Thellen's comments about MRWA were simply not true. I have not seen any information, he said. I am waiting for those data, and we will do a full review. That is our role, to make sure the watershed is protected. We all live here, and when that information is here, I'll be scouring it. All we can do is hope that they will actually do their due diligence. They won't be paid off. In my deep dive of the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, I shared everybody that's given grant money to the MRWA because they themselves stated that that's who they're accountable to. Whoever gives them grants is who they're accountable to. So the number one being Eagle and the DNR, so government. The government gives them our taxpayer dollars. So let's hope that they actually stay fair and do their due diligence on the data. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. Now, the Midwesterner posts up, American Gotion admits wholly owned and controlled by Chinese company. The FARA filing details numerous interactions between Whitmer administration and CCP-linked corporation. That is where the good stuff is, because, again, most people that didn't already know, or rather, most people already knew that there were Chinese ties. Some people wanted to say, oh, Volkswagen owns most of it, and so it's, not that big of a deal. Now that this came out, they said, oh, we never said it wasn't owned by CCP. We just don't care. Basically, they just don't care. They should have just said that to begin with. They don't care that it's owned by the Chinese government. Gotion Inc.'s American mask slipped Friday when company's Foreign Agent Registration Act filing was made public. The company has attempted to argue its Chinese parent company, which has documented ties to the CCP, will not influence its American version. But the FARA filing, which is required for companies attempting to influence politicians and regulators on behalf of a foreign government, read in part, Gotion Inc. is wholly owned and controlled by Hefe Gotion High-Tech Power Energy Company, Ltd. According to the U.S. Justice Department, FARA requires certain agents of foreign principals who are engaged in political activities or other activities specified under the statute to make periodic public discourse of the relationship with a foreign principal, as well as activities, receipts, and disbursements in support of those activities. As previously exclusively reported by the Midwesterner, Gotion High-Tech Articles of Association require the company to be affiliated with the CCP. Well, I wouldn't say exclusively reported. I got that same information and made a video on it, FYI. In July 2022, Gotion, which is attempting to purchase 700 acres of property near Big Rapids for the 1 square mile battery component plant, published a 94-page document titled Articles of Association, essentially the equivalent of an American company's bylaws. Chapter 6 of the Articles of Association established party committee, whose sole purpose is to ensure the company is adhering to Communist Party doctrine and furthering CCP objectives. The party committee of the company shall perform its duties in accordance with the Constitution of the Communist Party of China and other party regulations. So I did a whole video on the Articles of Association. I will link that down below if you want to check it out. But the really interesting stuff here is there's this video that's proving that the owner of Gotion is a member of the CCP, which we should all know. And he recounted an interaction with communist dictator Xi Jinping while Li showed off the company's electric bus technology. When President Xi visited Hefe last time, I introduced to him about the battery we provided for JAC's electric vehicle and touted the growth in battery capacity. But of course, he's the richest man in his province, in Anhui, Gotion, which is headquartered in Hefe City in the Anhui province. So Gotion CEO is the richest man of that province in China. Do you think that he's not part of the CCP? You don't become the richest man of a province without being a member of the CCP. He has hired a Big Rapids area man named Chuck Thelen to serve as his American representative for the foothold in the state. Again, the fact that he is from this area speaks volumes. That's why he was chosen, okay? And he's a sellout. That's another reason he's chosen. He performs media interviews and interacts with government officials. Thelen signed the FARA filing on behalf of the foreign company. The company's corporate filing of the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs calls Gotion a foreign profit corporation with an American beachhead established in Fremont, California. The FARA filing undermines the notion that the company is an American subsidiary of the Chinese corporation, as some have claimed. In other words, the mandates to promote and grow the Communist Party at the grassroots level of the company would likely be a requirement at the Big Rapids operation, which the company says could employ 2,350 people. The company also disclosed it coordinated with both State Senator Sarah Anthony, the lead of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and then staff Curtis Hertel to gather background on concerns raised during Senate Appropriations hearings. Anthony is the chairwoman of the committee, which approved $175 million. Hertel is now running for Congress, angling to replace U.S. Rep. Alyssa Slotkin, who is opting to run for the U.S. Senate. The filing showed numerous other interactions between Whitmer officials and representatives of the MEDC. So there you have it. Senator Sarah Anthony, probably lobbied directly by Gotion. Here are her words. My fellow Appropriation Committee members take our responsibility to make the state's fiscal decisions very seriously. We are also charged with the responsibility of separating fact from fiction and policy from politics. In addition to the state budget work that is progressing, this also includes approving legislative transfers like the one we passed today for the Gotion project to build a new battery manufacturing plant in Megasite County. After consultation with the MEDC and voluntary actions by Gotion, we have been assured that there are safeguards in place to address the concerns that have been raised. After review and ongoing discussions of the proposal, the committee voted to approve the transfer. My support today was ultimately about the transformative impact of this project, around 2,350 new Michigan jobs, which will average $52,000 per year, more than double the per capita income in one of the poorest counties of the state. There you have it. Consultation with the MEDC and voluntary actions by Gotion. She's bought and paid for. All right, so now we're getting into the marshal. Now, the court hearing that was taking place, the judge should have said something by yesterday, but I have not heard anything yet. I've been looking on the Facebook, not the Marshall Mega site, not the Megasite website. I've been looking everywhere I think to look on an update, and I haven't found one yet. This is the attorney for the lawsuit. The lawsuit is not about referendum, or it is, about the referendum. It's not Blue Oval Plant. So I am not going to listen to this whole 23 minutes, but it is interesting. I will leave it down below. Something that I found on the committee for Marshall, not the Megasite, and Robbie Dube. They're working to get that referendum in place so that they can actually have a say in what's going on in their town. Let's see. Come over here. We have Hemlock Semiconductor has a new chief financial officer, August 14th. Officials with Hemlock Semiconductor, the nation's leading manufacturer of hyper-pure polysilicon for the semiconductor and solar industries, have announced a new chief financial advisor. So this is another Megasite that Marjorie Steele over at EDRA informed me about, and she's working on a page for this Megasite. So I guess that would make it 7 Megasites here in Michigan. And I don't know if there's much opposition yet to this. It's a new Megasite that we are looking into, so I'm going to try to get more information on that coming soon. But this is the most recent update, August 14th. This new chief financial officer, I've looked into a little bit and I have not found anything shady. So that's not to say there isn't anything out there. It's just I haven't found it. So we'll see what comes of this. And again, I'll find more information on that. Now, environmental testing begins at Eagle Township. Now, Eagle Township is the same one that has Mackinac Center suing Michigan State University for improperly redacting land use agreement. The Michigan State University is supposed to be keeping that land for agriculture, and the Mackinac is trying to see if they are allowed to actually sell the land to build a Megasite facility. We're going to have to keep our eye out on that, but there's nothing new yet as far as when the court date is or how that's going. But they are being sued. Michigan State University is being sued. They're not supposed to sell the property, as far as we know, because the land use agreement from the FOIA request had a lot of redactions. So we have to beg for information, and then they still don't give us all the information. And we have to sue them for the information. Don't you love that? Michigan State University? Why? Why you do? All right, so testing has begun for environmental and archaeological evaluations on the 1,900-acre future site of the Michigan Manufacturing Innovation Campus. The Lansing Economic Area Partnership announced August 16th. Dyer Well Drilling and Service is overseeing the drilling and water evaluation of a test well located at the northeast corner of State and Niles Road, according to LEAP. We understand the responsibility we bear in safeguarding our environment and the welfare of our community, said LEAP President and CEO Bob Trezzi. Again, to everybody's name that I'm butchering, if you watch this, I apologize. I mean no harm. I am just terrible at reading last names. Residents of Eagle Township have previously spoken out against the MMIC development, saying it's a waste of farmland and will negatively impact the community. Environmental consulting firm Triterra will perform an archaeological study and environmental site assessment of 1,900 acres, checking for indigenous artifacts and studying surrounding wetlands, historic uses of the land, buildings and structures, and any existing environmental risks. According to the organization, the development site is of significant scale. To our knowledge, there are only 3 to 4 economic development sites of the scale being marketed in the entire state. So it's a big one. The goal of the MMIC is to create good-paying local jobs for the next generation of workers. That's all they ever have to tout, is good-paying jobs. Now, the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly is a nonprofit organization, and the head there, it makes $95,000 a year. You're talking about good-paying jobs making $52,000 a year. Is that a good-paying job? I don't think so, especially when you have to wear a suit because of all the chemicals and dangers that you expose yourself to every day. Don't think it's worth it, but hey, I come from a point of privilege. Trust me when I say that I don't come from a point of privilege. I'm very blessed, but I am not making $94,000 a year. Michigan leaders want a high-tech future, and not even making $52,000 a year. I'll be straight up with you, but I would not work at a battery plant facility ever. Michigan leaders want a high-tech future. A Megasite could be part of that. State officials and business leaders want Michigan to lead the way in new technology, with 5 sites vying for billions of dollars in federal funds. The Lansing region is one of a handful of locations pitching to become the center of research for new materials. Business leaders say the Eagle Township Megasite is part of a bigger picture of Michigan becoming a leader in high-tech manufacturing. It's a vision some say is being driven by innovation and research happening at Michigan State University. It is a vision. Vision of anointed assholes. Right here. That's what it is. Thomas Sowell, The Vision of the Anointed. Please read. Very applicable to what's going on here. But that vision is being streamed through Michigan State University. If you look at MSU, there are tons of different connections to the United Nations Agenda 21-2030 Sustainable Development Goals. They are trying to implement them. They are working hard on doing the United Nations bidding. So technically, Michigan State University is just doing that same vision, implementing the same vision. It's kind of leveraging all the things that are unique of MSU. Research, assets that we're seeing commercialization, but maybe not as much as what could potentially happen, said Keith Lambert, the Chief Operating Officer of the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. LEAP is one of the several groups supporting an effort by Michigan State University Research Foundation to bring federal dollars to boost new material research and development. From military optics to semiconductor chips, business leaders say research at MSU has already made an impact and can do even more. Regional Technology and Innovation Hub Program. Regional. The proposed Lansing Tech Hub is one of 5 Michigan pitches already submitted to federal officials. The proposals are part of a national contest where 20 regions around the country will be picked to get $10 billion over 5 years to support the high-tech economy. I am really interested to see on what these 20 regions are and if they coincide with the mega regions from the U.S., the America 2050 plan. The proposal from Detroit Ann Arbor area looks to research mobilization and electrification. The Greater Grand Rapids proposal is being led by Grand Valley State University with a focus on battery production. State officials say the Discover Blue Consortium bid has a goal of investing in water technology in northern Michigan. They say that Skylift bid, which is being led by Western Michigan University, has a goal of innovating aircraft design with a focus on vertical takeoff and landing. Interesting. Lambert says the Michigan Manufacturing Innovative Campus in Eagle Township is part of the larger high-tech goal and fits well with a proposed materials advancement and research hub. He says it can also attract high-tech manufacturers. You know what definitely attracts them? Billions of taxpayer dollars. The advanced material and niche technology and brain power that we have in the Lansing region are going to serve and coalesce with that of a user. So it's going to strengthen our case. Landing the tech hub will make us more competitive to land something great at the piece of property and vice versa. Come down here, it says Lambert says it will take some time before regions are picked for the billions of dollars in federal investments. As for the Megasite, he says they are proactively running environmental tests and checking for archaeological significance ahead of any possible development. Why weren't environmental tests and archaeological digging done for Gotion? This is being done before possible development. Why is it we had to wait until they bought the land and they can start development whenever? Why? Drives me crazy. Excuse me. All right, so we have another one out of EDRA. This is from Russ Belland, Detroiters for Tax Justice. Should Flint residents foot the bill for the Buick City cleanup? Ashley Capital has proposed a redevelopment plan for the contaminated Buick City site. Seeing this is what could happen to any one of the megasites. A freaking mess. A mess to be cleaned up. And who's going to clean it up? We are. Good news, right? Well, maybe not. Ashley wants Flint residents to reimburse Ashley Capital for $72 million in site cleanup and preparation costs. Still, isn't the cleanup and preparation Flint's responsibility? No. Under the terms of the 2010 GM bankruptcy settlement, the U.S. government agreed to foot that bill and not put it on the shoulders of Flint residents. To do this, the U.S. government gave Racer Trust the mandate to clean up contamination on old GM sites, including Buick City, and prepare them for new use. As Racer Trust states on its website, Racer will clean up the properties to ensure that environmental conditions are not an impediment to sale or industrial reuse. So did Racer Trust complete its work? No. The environmental conditions at Buick City remain an impediment to the sale. Ashley will not buy the property unless someone, and that someone is Flint's residents, reimburses Ashley for removing the impediments. Seriously? So why isn't Ashley Capital asking Racer Trust to foot this bill? Ashley Capital probably believes it's easier to convince Flint residents to bear this cost. Racer Trust now denies it's responsible for removing slabs on the site that are covering contamination and says it doesn't have the money to do this anyway. Ashley Capital argues that even if Flint residents step in for Racer Trust, it's still a sweet deal for the city. Ashley points out that the land isn't worth much in its present contaminated state. Ashley's investment and the cleanup and preparation that Flint residents would reimburse them for will increase the value of the property. That increased value will generate more property taxes for Flint, and if the city agrees to a brownfield tax credit arrangement, Ashley can capture the vast majority of those increased property taxes from the city to reimburse itself. So that's a great deal, right? The site gets cleaned up and some property tax will even be left over for the city. It only sounds like a great deal because the land, in fact, isn't worth much in its contaminated state. But if the site were cleaned up and prepared for sale like the U.S. government promised, then the property taxes Flint received would be greater, and the deal would sound much less attractive. If the U.S. government met its obligations, then Ashley Capital wouldn't be the only bidder, and it couldn't impose such high costs on the residents of Flint. What are some other options? Racer Trust could live up to its commitment to remove the impediments that exist to selling the property, the contamination. If Racer Trust's position is that it doesn't have money for this, then it needs to tell that to the U.S. government. Flint residents did not create this problem, GM did. And the U.S. government took over that responsibility from GM when GM went through bankruptcy. Why? Why did the U.S. government do that? Why did we bail out all these companies? We should have let them fail. That's real capitalism. What we had is communism. Communism, where you steal the money of the taxpayer to bail out private industry. Flint's residents have carried enough burdens for the mistakes of other people, whether it's the state poisoning its water or the federal government not following through its promises it made when it settled the GM bankruptcy. Flint deserves to fully benefit from property taxes that the site will generate once it's cleaned up. It needs its property taxes to improve the quality of its roads, police department, fire department, schools, not to enrich billionaires. So what do? Tell Flint City Council to demand the U.S. government fully cleans up the site and not approve the brownfield tax captures to transfer its wealth to the rich. Excellent article. If you are in the area of Flint, I highly recommend you go to the city councils, you start holding your government accountable. It's about time we all did this. All across, every county needs to do this. Our government has been unaccountable for far too long. They don't work for us anymore, and we need to show them and tell them, hey, we're paying attention to you now, and this is what we want. Moving forward, cattle restricts working hours for battery plant employees amid excessive production capacity. So Chinese battery manufacturer Cattle has imposed restrictions on working class hours for some positions within its facilities since the end of last year, as demand from the country's booming EV sector starts to stall. So perhaps because they've pushed EV batteries in China for the last 10 years, they need a new market, and that's one of the reasons why their Silk Road initiative is going out to places like here in America, Michigan. But it's slowing down, and that means that jobs are slowing down. I don't know how exactly that will affect the Marshall Megasite, but Cattle is partnering up with Ford, so we need to keep an eye on the Chinese battery manufacturer Cattle. Share this tab. We got our next energy. I just wanted to show this. This is the World Economic Forum partners. So again, you go here and you look at all the partners. It's unbelievable how many industries, suppliers that are partnered with the World Economic Forum. And so the plan that they are implementing is the World Economic Forum United Nations plan. Now, going over here, I've already read this article in one of my news roundups, but I wanted to just reiterate this. This is from Tyler, the executive director of Flint and Genesee Economic Alliance, on the region's attractiveness for semiconductor and other industrial operations. We think we have a competitive advantage. This big old straw to Lake Huron. Gotta reiterate that. This is what they think. They're just gonna suck up the Lake Huron. They're gonna suck up our rivers. They're gonna steal our water for their frickin' products. Drives me nuts that somebody would have the gall to say that, as if it's a good thing. Durand City Council pulls out of Economic Development Group pushing Megasite. Came out August 14th out of MichiganNewsSource.com. The Shiawassee Economic Development Partnership has been trying to put together a deal in connection with the MEDC for a megasite in Vernon Township. However, on Monday, August 7th, the Durand City Council voted 6-0 to withdraw from their partnership with the SEDP, which the city was a charter member of. Councilman Brian Boggs, who is on the board of the SEDP, recused himself from voting. This is everywhere. Nuevo County is partnered up with an economic development company. Mecosta County, same thing. Obviously, Green Charter Township was. I mean, if you look, every county has partnered up with either the Right Place or something like the Right Place or a Michigan Economic Development Corporation partner, like LEAP. So this is an amazing step forward. We need to stop working with these companies because they are companies that are working for the MEDC. They're supposed to be working for the township to help the township, but they don't. They're helping implement central government's plans. So get them out of your township. Get them out of your county. We don't want to be partnered with these economic development corporations, period. So good job to Durand City Council. The Megasite being proposed is one of many in the state that has communities up in arms over the secrecy of the deals, as well as other concerns including traffic, water usage, wetlands, destroying farmland, and wildlife habitat. The properties in question are usually pitched to be future battery or semiconductor plants. Such is the case in Vernon Township, where Councilman Boggs said the land in Durand could be used for factorial energy battery production facility. He has, in the past, alleged that the company has ties with China and expressed that they would not be popular with the local residents. Steve Dugged, a moderator with the Stand Up Michigan Shiawassee County Chapter Facebook group, has made a similar comment, posting that the deal is an attempt by a Chinese battery plant to move into Vernon Township, and that 2 representatives from the SCDP were at the meeting defending the deal, but that their dishonesty and backroom dealings sealed their fate. At the August 7th meeting, council members discussed another gathering concerning the Megasite that had been held on July 17th at Durand Union Station. It had been learned that before the meeting, SCDP President and SEO Justin Horvath and SCDP Board Chair Brian Marks had signed non-disclosure agreements with Factorial Energy. Then they all proceeded to meet together without the Durand council members or township officials because they hadn't signed NDAs. Yeah, how is it they're signing NDAs? As the August 7th meeting, Councilman Boggs asked for the names of the business representatives who were at the meeting, but the SCDP did not provide an answer. Because of these issues, the city council members said they had lost trust in the SCDP, who they no longer viewed as being on the side of the city, even though they had been partners for more than 2 decades. Wow. Yeah, again, the Right Place was supposed to be helping the county, Mecosta County. It wasn't supposed to be helping Gotion. It wasn't supposed to be helping MEDC. But that's what they did. They did not help the freaking people. So it's a front. And these individuals saw that and they did something about it. So it is a huge win. And I'm so appreciative to these individuals that decided to stop their partnership with this economic development corporation. Kelly Jelly says the Michigan Township Association should go also, leading all Michigan townships to smart city agendas. Attend your local meetings. It's a lonely battle. We'll finish watching later. Thank you. I appreciate that comment and for watching. And Michigan Township Association, I'm going to look into that and see what I can find. Thank you. But leading Michigan townships to smart city agendas, I absolutely believe it. There's no doubt that even in counties like townships like Green Charter Township, who are trying to make their own master plan, it's going to be all based on sustainable development, which all comes from United Nations Agenda 21. They're the first ones to create the sustainable development ideas. This is a comprehensive book on how they're going to implement sustainable development. Since 1993, they have been doing it, and we are seeing it. So thank you for that comment. And she's absolutely right. Please go to the township board meetings whenever you can. Go to the planning commission meetings. Start holding your governments accountable. The other council members didn't seem impressed with the information or explanations coming out of the two SEDP representatives. Councilman Patrick O'Connor said, "I'm a veteran. I'm gone. I'm not having some plant coming in here turning this to Flint." In the end, the city decided to withdraw from the SEDP, which means that taxpayer money would also be withdrawn from them. The city has been investing $10,000 a year with the SEDP, which got them a seat on the board, which has been the city manager, Cameron Horvath. Councilman Boggs will most likely remain on the board as he is the SEDP treasurer through his affiliation as the Shiawassee County administrator. Wow. So yeah, they've been partners. The township or the county has been giving $10,000. The city has been investing $10,000 a year to give to the SEDP, and they have a seat on the board. That's crazy. Former Mayor Kenneth McDowell said on a community Facebook page, "It's about time they get rid of them to SEDP. I knew they were sneaky when I was the mayor of Durand, and I tell you right now, there's more people in the wood shack that no one knows about. I applaud Durand and City Council for stopping this last night, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done." The MEDC has announced back in December of last year that they would be awarding Shiawassee County government $680,000 community development block grant in order to fund future development in Vernon Township for a potential megasite. The grant was to be used for site planning, surveying, archaeological assessment and endangered species study, traffic studies, water and wastewater analysis, and more. The potential megasite would be along the I-69 corridor with borders of Durand, Goodall, Brown, and Lansing roads. Councilman Boggs said at the meeting that withdrawing from SEDP doesn't mean that the Megasite deal is dead. Michigan News Source reached out to the city manager, Cameron Horvath, who explained what it meant. He said, "Pulling out of the SEDP doesn't limit our options. It just pushes me now to the forefront of economic development. So I'll be the person now for the city that is in the conversation rather than before we had the SEDP kind of doing it for us." Why are you having the SEDP do it for you? Marjorie Steele, founder of EDRA, which is Economic Development Responsibility Alliance of Michigan, was pleased about the decision by the city of Durand to withdraw from the SEDP and said, "The city of Durand withdrawing itself from the SEDP is a fantastic step forward, not just for stopping the facility in Durand, but also for taxpayers across the state. This sends a clear warning shot across the MEDC's bow that the opaque meddling of local EDCs will not be blindly tolerated anymore, and it set a new standard for economic responsibility and independence for cities and townships across the state." Steele went on to say at EDRA, we would like to see every single township, county, and city in the state of Michigan to vote to withdraw itself from all involvement with local economic development corporations, all of which are tied to the corporate mafia league that the MEDC has become. Well said, Marjorie. Exactly. It is a mafia. Steele continued, "In place of these multinational investment deals cooked up by unelected officials, we'd like to see communities spearhead their own citizen-led developments. We'd like to see community dollars reinvested directly back into community residents, small businesses, and truly sustainable, locally developed green technologies by the community itself, not some distant Lansing bigwigs." Author J.P. Isbell, thank you. Excellent article. I greatly appreciate it. Now, quickly, we have events. Michigan Strategic Fund Board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Again, I should be live streaming it. I thought I had the sound figured out. Today, it didn't work, but I swear tomorrow it will work. God willing, help me get the tech right. August 23rd, Stop the Marshall Megasite protest. August 26th, another weekly protest. Marshall has a lot going on with the protests. They are very organized, and it needs to be done, so excellent job. Tonight, Marshall Township Hall. The meeting is held at the same time and the same day as the City of Marshall City Council meeting. So this is tonight, Monday, at 7 p.m. the Marshall Township Council meeting and the Marshall Township Board meeting. So you need people at both. Try to coordinate with whoever you can. If you're in that area, you need to hit up these meetings and try to show a force in both areas. Show, strength in numbers. And the agenda is posted on their website. Okay. So go there if you can. That is all I have for the Megasite Roundup. I wanted to share just a few things. New cameras will give tickets to drivers who pass a stopped school bus. So I don't know exactly how. I guess maybe they're going to put a camera here. Let's see. Hoping to crack down on drivers passing by. Civil infraction. Cameras placed below the stop arm on the left side of the bus will take a picture of the license plate passing cars. So now we have cameras going on school buses. Surveillance state technology. This is part of the unfortunate 5G industry 4.0 takeover where we're going to have social credit scores. You don't need cops to pull you over. You'll just have a camera to send you a ticket. Same thing. Michigan House approves photo bill authorizing camera enforcement in work zones. So you speed in a work zone, you can have a ticket mailed to your door. Let's see. Michigan to survey residents' perception of potential road use charge. As the state's transition electric vehicle takes a toll on its gas tax revenue, the potential road use charge would tax drivers based on how far they traveled. So this is going to get a GPS tracker on electric vehicles just to start with, just so that they pay their fair share of taxes. But eventually you can guarantee that everybody will have a tracker and everybody will be paying more in road tax. I am for no tax, really. Teeny tiny government, teeny tiny taxes. That's what I'll say. So I am not for putting a freaking GPS on electric vehicles. That, not to mention, they already have tons of technology to surveil everything they do. But I guess you can't talk to Tesla and Ford and each company to try to get the data. That would be even more public-private partnerships. But still, I am not for tracking this. I'm not for gas tax. I'm not for road tax like that. We have enough taxes that should pay for our roads. They just steal our money and send it over to Ukraine. So I'm not for it. Just more proof that social credit score system is en route if we allow it. Michigan Whitmer spends $55,705 on another overseas trip. So this is to Austria and Latvia in May of 2023, her second taxpayer-funded travel this year, which she says are trade missions. The total flight cost was $43,000, and that's private jet. But I'm sure she's paying for the offset carbon credits. So because she's got money, she's okay. She can fly around just fine. No big deal. $4,805 miscellaneous spending. $3,000 on hotels, $3,000 on transportation, and $418 in meals, according to the requests obtained by the MEDC. Once again, why do we have to beg for information? This is our taxpayer dollars that she's flying around spending. Why didn't they just tell us? Why do we have to do a FOIA request? And then why do you get it redacted half the time? Drives me crazy. And I really wanted to get into this, but I'm going to have to save it for another video because this video has been going for quite some time. But just to show you a little preview of what I hope to talk about next week, or maybe even on Thursday this week, I'll try to get to it. But software is now as important as hardware in cars. This is what I've been saying, that we're turning cars into a software service. Video games were the first, which is funny because this article that I'm going to share with you next time, what will the future of cars be like? Video games may have the answer. And let me tell you, video games have been ruined by the software service crap. You buy a game for $70, 6 months later, it's not even the same game. What do you think is going to happen to your car? You buy a car, and for however much, $80,000, and say something wrong about Ford, and they can make your car worthless. It won't be able to move. They can turn your radio off. They can turn your the ability to roll down your windows. They could just turn it off remotely. So you drive off with one kind of car, and you 6 months later could have a completely different type of car because it's all software. It's just going to be awesome. Not, again, ruin video games. I used to play them. I'm playing them now because of Baldur's Gate 3, but it's a rare game indeed when it comes out fully featured. Feature full, whatever. Electric road systems. I'm going to go over exactly what this is next week, or again Thursday. Tomorrow, Michigan Strategic Fund, and hopefully Maui. Driving in the future, why open source is key in a world of software-defined cars. Now imagine if it isn't open source. Then you have like, what is it, John Deere, where you can't work on your own equipment because you don't have a right to, because you're not really you didn't buy it, you're renting it. That's how you own nothing and you be happy, because everything you have, you're really just renting it. The video games I have, I'm really just renting them. I bought them for $70, but as soon as the company decides they don't want to continue servicing that video game, it's worthless. It's gone. I rented it. Same thing with your car. That's what's coming. Industrial revolution of electric mobility. Michigan's road electrification. And yeah, that's just the same. Michigan's road to electrification, but this is out of the Automation Alley. So let me bring myself up. That's all I have for you today. It was another really long video. I just have so much to share with you all the time that I would like the videos to be an hour, but sometimes they get closer to 2 hours. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I hope you learned something new. I will get this road electrification and the software service video out as soon as possible. Get that information to you, because I know some of you were wondering about how those roads will work, and that article will explain pretty well. So thank you guys. I hope that you continue the fight. Do not lose hope, okay? It's not over till it's over. And I have full faith Michiganders will stop this centralized government. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully 9 a.m. while we watch the Michigan Strategic Fund spend our money and just approve every, United Nations Sustainable Development plan that they can, and we'll see what they got going on. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you again. And She-Wolf, please email me. Love you guys.